Hare Krishna and welcome to this video on Sanskrit nouns. This is on masculine declension number 1, stem in a short A, and this is part 1. So let's begin with an overview of the 3 parts. In part 1, which is this video here, we will be talking about declension 1 in the numbering system as a whole. And in part 2, in that video, we will talk about the prêt-à-porter declension tables. And in the 3rd part, we will discuss how to decline any masculine a noun using endings tables. But first, let's do the numbering system discussion in this part 1 video. And the first point we should make about it is that it is not any ancient Indian system. And what do I mean by that? Well, what we're talking about is masculine declension number 1. So the issue here is, where does the number 1 come from? And the answer is, at least not from any ancient Indian system, because their way of organizing things is ruled by the actual ending of the stem. So in this case, they organize it in terms of the short A that the stem ends in. So masculine declension 1 is not a term found in any traditional Sanskrit Indian system. Another observation is that it is not Whitney's system either. So declension 1 is not exactly found in Whitney in his introduction to the declensions in Sanskrit on page 111 and onwards. So he uses another system which is labeled in a similar way. He talks about first declension and second declension like that. But it's important to note that that the content of it is not the same. It doesn't do things the same as what I will be doing in this numbering system. A third point here is that the numbering system is not also any Greek or Latin system that is used by traditional classics scholars. So we're looking so because they use a terminology much like the Whitney terms that he's using, and that is they're talking about first and second declension like that. But that is not how we will be doing things here, because this numbering system is a Sanskrit Studio creation. But it's important here to note that that we are not really thinking of this creation as some invention or some fantastic revolutionizing new thing, but it's just a way to organize things. So we are doing this in the same or similar fashion as Whitney is when he's talking about introducing his system of declensions, and the sort of the atmosphere he's building up in his discussion is that this is not a radical or a super fantastic thing, but just a practical and doable way to organize the declensions so that they become easier to talk about and easier to use and all that. So it does have pros and cons, and there are some good things and some bad things. But I think, as we will see later on, I think that this system in the times of internet and with the whole idea here of putting things online and putting things on videos and PDFs and many different things like that, there is, in combination with like more purely grammatical considerations, I think there is scope for this numbering system. So that are some ideas behind this new way of looking at things. So let's look at some quickly here at the Sanskrit Studio system, and one of the main features is that it is arranged per gender. So each gender has its own number series. So it's masculine 1, 2, 3, and so on. Neutral 1, 2, 3, and feminine 1, 2, 3, and like that. So looking at it as a whole, the idea is not, as in Whitney, to have one type of declension and then include, for example, in his case, like he says that the first declension is there's a masculine version and there's a neuter version, and those are grouped together like that, but there is no feminine declension at all, which is coupled with his first declension. So only when in his second declension do we see the first feminine forms. So I'm not doing like that. I'm assigning number 1 and number 2 to all the 3 different genders. So, but that doesn't mean that all, there's a problem here, and then that is that there's a linking horizontal linking here. So when we look at this system, this page here, with masculine 1, neutral 1, feminine 1, and then masculine 2, neutral 2, and feminine 2, one might get the impression that there is some kind of horizontal connection in between the different genders on each row here, on the row number 1 and row number 2, like that. But that is not necessarily so. So in some cases there is a connection, either morphologically, that the actual forms are very similar, or there is some other conceptual connection. But I do not guarantee that on any row that there is a strong connection between the feminine and the neuter, for instance, or something like that. Well, there is a strong connection between the masculine and neuter columns, and between the masculine 1 and neuter 1, and masculine 2 and neuter 2, like that. But between the feminine version of things, that is not always the case. So depending on exactly which row we are, we may have a different relationship between the feminine declension table and the masculine and the neuter one. So now in the if we're just discussing the first row, namely the masculine 1, neuter 1, feminine 1 declensions, we have some good news, and that is that the feminine declension 1 actually does share some things with declension 1 of the masculine and declension 1 of the neuter. And one thing they share is application, namely that all these declensions can be used in partly similar circumstances. So take, for example, adjectives ending in A, in short A, and participle ending in a short A, regardless of whether they are qualifying a masculine noun, a neuter noun, or a feminine noun, declension 1 can be used. So when masculine, if we have like a participle qualifying a masculine noun, we would use the masculine 1 table. If we have a participle qualifying a neuter noun, then we would use the neuter 1 table. And if we have a participle qualifying a feminine noun, then we would use the feminine 1 table. So declension 1 is very useful, not only the masculine variety, but also the neuter and the feminine. And it can be used not only for producing our prêt-à-porter nouns, but also for producing the forms for the adjectives and for the participles also. In the next part, we'll look at some more things, and in particular the prêt-à-porter tables. And until then, thank you very much for watching, and Hare Krishna, Hare Rama.